Hello and welcome to another episode of The Exchange.
On today's show, we're going to look at whether a man is a viable financial plan for a woman.
We'll discuss the importance of financial literacy for women and how they can manage this when having children.
Are you a single woman needing a financial plan? Here are some quick tips to have you on the right track to financial stability. Number 1, spend less than you earn. Number 2, stick to a budget. Number 3, pay off credit card debt. If all this seems too hard, don't forget, you can always rely on a man to be your financial plan.
On the panel with us today, we have Westpac's Director of Women's Markets, Larke Riemer. Larke has over 28 years with the Westpac Group and is recognised internationally for her efforts in empowering women economically. It's great to have you back with us, Larke.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Great to be here.
You must have done something right the first time.
Yeah.
We loved you. We're also delighted to be joined by Zoe Lamont, founder of 10,000 Girl, which is a financial literacy program for women across Australia. Zoe received the ASIC Money Smart Award for an outstanding example of an innovative and effective financial literacy approach for women. Welcome, Zoe.
Thanks for having me.
Larke, tell us, how important is it for women to be financially independent?
I think today it is probably one of the most single important things for a woman is to have that financial independence. I mean, I've been saying it for many, many years because I've got 2 daughters who are in their 40s and their 30s, but more so today, it is important. And Zoe and her organisation do a brilliant job with a lot of young women. So it's really getting that message out to women that a man is not a financial plan, and financial independence is really important.
Zoe, I'd like to hear about 10,000 Girl, because I've, being a guy, I've not really explored it. So tell us, what is it, why did it start, and what is its mission?
Well, as Larke said, 10,000 Girl campaign is a fun financial wellbeing program for young women, typically in their 20s and 30s, but we get women in their 40s, 50s. We've even had an 8-year-old. So it's never too early to start. And I suppose the inspiration behind it came, my background's in actually humanitarian work. And so when I came back to Australia, I was like, whoa, we have so many resources, but we don't get taught often at school or rarely around the kitchen table how to manage them. So there's huge opportunities.
So it's educational, connecting the dots for people.
Absolutely.
That's really good. I'm glad to hear about an 8-year-old starting. That's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking about the future.
It's very interesting. And this is on your website that this 8-year-old is involved, or how?
There's probably photos of her making vision boards and talking about money somewhere.
Great, that's wonderful. And Larke, why do you think now more so than in the past? Like, what is the reason for it has become such an important thing?
Well, I think the interesting thing is through the generations, the changes in habits towards money. So our grandmothers, for instance, never thought that it was their place to talk about money, that it was always the husband or it was the man's place. And women took time out of work to stay home and didn't think that was their job. That's what they had to do. Once you got married, you actually had to leave your job. And so there were not as many things available to women back in those times. What I'm really pleased to say today, through all these programs like what we do at Westpac, and a lot of different organisations and 10,000 Girls, is that we've done research towards the end of last year, and 30% of the Y generation girls in Australia today already own their own homes. Now, 30%. That was unthinkable years ago.
And has that been because their parents have encouraged them to do that, or is it?
No, they're spending a lot of time and money on their education. So when you take that much effort and that much money to get a higher education, they want to actually put it to work. And so what they're doing is they're getting well-paid jobs, but what they're also wanting to do is make that money work for them. So this Y generation group are really looking for information and education through all the different ways they can of how they can make that education and that good job and that high income, how they can make that work for them. And it's not about getting married young and having children. It's about, I want it all now and I'm prepared to work for it.
Now, you mentioned earlier that it's you don't agree with a man being a financial plan. What are the downsides of making a man a financial plan, if I can put it that way?
Well, ignorance. Ignorance to actually the money that the family has, where it is, what's happening. With the high divorce rate in Australia, so many women, and would be why Zoe would be getting a lot more of those older women coming to her group, because those women that got married and felt that, well, I'm okay, you know, I've got someone to look after me and I'll stay home and have the children look after them. And then if they end up in divorce, a lot of them don't actually even know what money there is and how to manage it, the investments, what's happening with the super. And we've talked about that before in your program, which is so important to be across that. So what is happening is these women then who think that a man is a financial plan are really destitute. And there's some women, as Zoe said, even into their 60s and 70s, who actually are ending up divorced, or they lose their husbands through death or separation or what have you. So it's about, if you're financially independent, you have a lot of power.
Yeah.
When you're not financially independent, you're open to what people can give you and what other people will assist you. So that independence is so
You lose
important.
your choices. So Zoe, are you finding that most of the people that you're working with are single, or have they got partners?
Such an array, and I think that it's exciting to see whether people are single or newly in a relationship, and so wanting to start having conversations early on in a relationship around money, which I think is really healthy. Or, as Larke referred to, have recently either separated or become on their own, and are therefore either having to start again or work with what they've got to make sure they'll be all right going forward. We always say a man's a bonus, so you have to plan for yourself.
Yeah.
And when other things happen, well, it's...
I'm so glad we're seen as a bonus. I've just got to say that.
Well, I was going to argue with that. Is a man really a bonus? Because I have a couple of friends who got married and lost all the wealth that they had acquired.
Yes, but you're not looking at me when you say
No, absolutely not. No,
Although you did look at me
I
when
did
you
look
said
at
that.
you. But that also can happen because men can look for a woman to be a financial plan. I think.
I actually think it's well, Zoe and I are more interested in looking after women because that's our
Yes.
lot in life, isn't it? We want to make sure that women are really financially educated, but it's about men and women. You know, everybody needs to have a clear head, and when they go into a relationship, you know, last time we were here, we talked about sexually transmitted debt, you know, and
Yes.
interesting, that's another thing that you actually need to have those conversations around what the money is, what debt do you have, what do you bring to the relationship.
And how quickly would you both suggest, like, how quickly do those conversations need to happen?
I personally think if you're in a serious relationship and you become engaged to be married, or even if you're deciding to move in together, that's when you have those conversations, because you want to know what debt there is. And men need to know what debt the women that they're involved with have
Yes.
too. So each in a partnership, I don't want to kill...
So it's transparent, it's open, it's honest.
And we don't want to kill romance.
No,
Let's face it,
absolutely,
romance
yes.
is still beautiful.
And
Yeah.
are you finding that men are more open now to discussing and revealing
So we
financial
probably
status?
could answer that.
I think it's nice to see that so many women that now are feeling that they are on even playing field, and so having those conversations become gender irrelevant in a way. And so, I mean, that's in your best case scenario. And then I think that there are still a lot of relationships where the dynamic coming from historical beliefs and experiences still put people on a different, having different expectations on who should bring the money in and how it should be
So
spent.
should women have a slush fund?
Or should women be paid?
Absolutely. It used to be called the running away.
Running away.
money. So I don't know what you call it
I
today.
think Christie
but,
has a slush fund. She's always got a little bit of money stuck away somewhere, and I don't know where the hidey holes
Yeah,
are. I just see
sometimes
it from
I
time to
In a
time.
relationship, you should have your joint money
Yes.
as a family, and then you should
Have
each...
the woman's money.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to say it's all in that, but
Come on, I
think
feel like I'm
each-
being ganged up against here.
Yeah,
Come
no,
on, Larke,
I
you
think
finish.
either partner should have their own independence as well.
Yep, well said. And if a woman decides to stay at home as a full-time mum at home caring for the kids, should she be paid? Should there be some sort of salary sacrifice or financial independence
If
for
that's
her?
possible. I mean,
Zoe, if you don't mind, I'll answer that, is in the sense of, if you're financially able to, I always say to young women that I work with, if you can actually continue to get some money put into your superannuation for the time that you're off. Now, it may not be the same if you're, by your husband. And also look to the government. There's a lot of things you can actually put in place that if you are taking time out, that you can apply for certain amounts of money from the government as well. So go to a financial advisor. The big thing here is that you need financial advice from an expert that you trust. And both of you need to go and have that discussion, not one goes and someone else doesn't.
All right, we'll come back and talk a little bit more about that as we continue. We're going to take a break and back with Street Talk right after this.
How important is financial security in choosing a life partner?
The older I get, the more important I think it is, actually.
Well, originally at the time, we got married very young, so it probably didn't come into the calculations at that stage, but I guess as it progresses, it gets very important.
Yes, you do. You need a bit of financial security. Otherwise, it's difficult to buy houses, to live, to get through life.
I don't think you should choose your life partner based on what financial security they should give you. I think you should build it between the two of you.
I think there's more to it than financial. Love each other and be able to get on with each other. And if you can do that, you can get through anything. So it's really not a financial thing.
I don't reckon that finances have much to do with happiness and loving and belonging. With that kind of stuff, you sort of should just go with how you feel.
I think that without financial security, you're never going to have a lasting relationship. Love can only take you so far. You need to have a strong foundation for a life together.
It would help. I just think as long as we love each other and as long as we're happy and we can manage, I think that's important.
I think it definitely plays a role, but it's not the most important thing. For me, it was a bonus that my partner was financially secure. I would have still chose him whether he was or not. So, yeah, it's good to have, but it's not everything.
And if you were to have your time again, would you ever marry for money?
No, I don't think so.
No, I'm not that type of person.
No, I don't think I'd marry for money, but it'd help if I had some.
Each his own. Really, I don't think you should marry for money, no.
No, if you love them, you can work together and make changes and look forward and get secure in the best way you can.
I wouldn't say never, but it wouldn't be on the preference sort of list.
So what about marrying for money?
No, it's not what we're about. That's not what we're about anyway. We're compatible and we love each other, and that's the reason we're together.
Welcome back. We're discussing whether a man is a financial plan with Larke Riemer and Zoe Lamont. And Sandra, our Street Talk reporter, welcome.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi.
Some great responses out on the streets.
Very interesting, I must say.
What stood out to you?
I kind of feel, actually, it doesn't matter what age that I was talking to, there was this kind of thing that love is all you need and, to make things work. And that kind of made me think, are we being a little bit naive? And, compatibility is important, but surely financial compatibility, or at least a work ethic compatibility, needs to come into the equation when choosing a life partner.
I think financial compatibility is really important, because if you've got someone who's spend all the time and someone else who wants to save, there's obviously it's going to create some challenges, isn't it, in a relationship?
It is, but I also... So we do a lot of research around these issues, and it's quite interesting because for years, remember your father or your parents would say, the wife always maxes out the credit card, and it always seems to be the woman is the one that's spending all the money. Well, we dispelled that myth completely, because in actual fact, it's behaviours, and so men and women can have those behaviours, and it's around the honesty piece again. But interesting, so you say around love is in the air type attitude to it. It is very much that, and particularly for older women who are going into a new relationship later in life because they've either divorced or lost their partner. They are so blinkered around the fact that I've met a new man and I love him and I don't want to upset him, so I don't want to talk about money, because really the chances of meeting someone is... And so they go into these relationships with their blinkers on, and they don't really think.
Would you find that with the women that you deal with that are in that older age bracket?
Yeah, I think that if people are desperate for a relationship, you do see people putting their blinkers on. But I think in the grand scheme of things, that society has sometimes puts too much impetus on finances and on money, and we forget that actually money, it has just always been a tool and an enabler for living how we want to live. So I think I like what you say, Sandra, in that you need to have a similar sense of work ethic and talk about your plans and have similar plans, and then you make the money match your plans. But I don't think it's ever about money.
Money shouldn't be the glue then.
No, I mean, money is a tool. One of the guys on Street Talk said, you know, as long as we can manage. Well, I think the managing, you know, people, one of the biggest things cited for divorce or breaking up relationships is the fact that of financial stress and pressure. So I agree that definitely there's got to be, you know, more to meeting somebody and asking them for their balance. But, you know, at the same time, work ethic and how they feel about money, I think is a very important topic.
I think it usually sorts itself out in the early stages of a relationship, but I just worry that it is still a bit of a taboo to talk about money. But going back again to this Y generation group, in that research we did, they actually said that when they get married, they want a partner who has goals like they do, who has assets or wants to have a home or wants to do certain things. They want to marry someone who's like-minded like them. So I think that's showing a big change.
So
I think it shows a lot of wisdom, doesn't it?
Yeah, and women obviously are becoming smarter.
Yes.
And expecting to be part of those decisions rather than just allowing the man to make all those decisions and not being involved.
I like what there was a couple that said, you know, we want to build it together.
Yes.
There's
Yes,
compatibility
like that.
there.
And I think that's what Zoe was alluding to, is that it's actually a partnership. It's not one or the other, it's working together.
Yeah. And understanding that, you know, that a woman or a man is not a meal ticket, so to speak. I mean, I spoke to somebody recently who was planning to get into a more serious relationship with someone who isn't working and whose work history is very, very sketchy. And I'm like, you need to really think about this, because like you say, it's not a, you know, keep the blinkers on and jump in. You think it's all going to work out.
That's right. Well, one of the people said, I wouldn't marry for money, but it certainly helps if they have some.
Yeah, I actually say to my daughters, if you've got financial independence, that's fantastic. And if the right man comes along, that's icing on the cake.
There you go. But icing on itself just makes you sick, doesn't it? Because it's sickly sweet. So you've got to have cake as well.
No, I think also it's interesting because they mentioned wealthy, to marry somebody who's wealthy. I actually don't think that the rich necessarily make
wealthy.
The wealthy men in this world aren't necessarily the best partners to have.
Yeah.
Wealth doesn't maketh the man.
No.
So the old Holly song, All I Need Is the Air That I Breathe and to Love You, is not our theme song for this program. Sandra, thank you for popping in today.
Great to
and
be
we'll
here.
be back with more on The Exchange right after this. Welcome back. We're chatting with Westpac's Larke Riemer and 10,000 Girls Zoe Lamont on whether a man is a financial plan.
Indeed. Tell us, Zoe, what do you think is the most important overriding attitude that women should have to financial security?
I think it's a willingness and a wanting to be in control of your life. And if you have some clear goals, and if you have learnt about your basic financial enablers and have your foundations laid, then your self-esteem naturally rises, and you feel okay should, you know, rugs get ripped out from under us now and again, and if you know that you'll be okay whatever happens, and you can feel like you can either enter or leave relationships as you feel is A-OK, then I think that that's a really nice attitude to have, that I want to be in control.
That's good.
What would you add to that, Larke?
My opinion is also the same as Zoe's, but also more importantly is when you actually are, the attitude needs to be that I want to be secure. So, and I don't want to be dependent on everybody else. So if you have that independence, you feel so good. lightness of heart, and I liken it to the months where you overspend.
Yes.
When you know you've gone out and bought something you shouldn't have and you've put it on a credit card and you're not going to be able to pay the whole thing, you're only going to pay the minimum.
You listening to this, honey?
And all these things, all of
Never.
well, we've already worked out that he does most on the credit card. So
ganging up on me again, you
the
girls.
whole thing is, I think, is when you have it all under control and you know, as Zoe said, that you've got the money there should something happen, you actually feel terrific. You can really approach life in a much better way. It's very depressing when you're financially not independent and your finances are in a mess.
And you're paddling along like
It's
a little
exactly. It's
You're
an awful way.
financial decisions rather than the decisions that you actually want to make and that are right in your heart.
Now, earlier in the program, one of you mentioned that it's never too early to start making financial plans, etc. What are some of the things you should think about to put in place for the future?
I've always talked to young women today that not to ignore the fact that they've got to think about their retirement planning, because a lot of young people think, well, I've got plenty of time, don't talk to me about retirement, you know, I'm only in my 20s or my 30s. But because we're all living so much longer today and, you know, you're looking at retirement where you get a pension, you know, by the time some of these young people retire, it'll be 70 before they're able to get a pension, if at all. You know, you're going to have to actually manage your own finances. So the earlier you start, the better. So, and it's just about, it's the same with 10,000 Girls, and you're saying that you had such a young one to start with. The whole idea is empowering them to not be frightened of money. Because we talked earlier and just quickly about how arguments in the family start a lot of times about finances, and children, if they grow up in a household where they hear these arguments around money, it's really awful. So how those are the early discussions you
and
need
it's
to
the
have.
healthy discussion. I mean, trying to not make children feel that everything is made about money, but at the same time, money is important. And it's that, you know, when you bring up children where you don't actually go to the bank and lodge money, you get bank money out of a hole in the wall. They just think it's there forever.
That plastic card just gives you access to unlimited number of $50 notes, doesn't it?
But you don't
when
want
you're a
children to be
6-year-old.
frightened of money either.
No, that's true.
Because if they hear those arguments, I think they become, well, that's made mum and dad unhappy, or, you know, they're frightened of money, aren't they?
It needs to be an enabler rather than a restriction. Like we talk about spending plans, being aware of your spending rather than setting a restrictive budget, you know? And so I think that it needs to be looked at as a tool rather than as a enemy or...
As we start to finish up, what are some of the things that you've put into place personally? Let's go to you first of all, Zoe.
Well, I'm a passionate planner, and I think that having clear short-term, medium-term and long-term goals, and then having your what we call money buckets. So you have your short-term and your medium-term and your long-term buckets, and you every time there's money coming in, you're putting the ratio into those three buckets. And so depending then on what stage of life you're in and what your priorities are and what choices that you've decided to make along the way is, you know, dependent on, but as long as you know that you're putting the right amount in the buckets that align with your goals.
Yeah, and very quickly, Larke?
Again, I agree totally with what Zoe said. From my point of view, I'm a baby boomer, so I'm into my 60s now, and I've always had a plan in place. And I had a good mentor who sat me down many years ago and said, in order to get here, these are the things you need to do. So planning is really important, but always keep track of it and revisit it regularly and make some adjustments, but get a financial advice.
That's great advice. Larke and Zoe, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for joining us today on The Exchange. Please go to our website for a fact sheet as well as more information about our show. And we hope you can join us next time.
Bye for now.